It is February 22nd, 2022. I'm Diane Barrett. I'm here with Reeni Goldin. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
That's it.
Okay, great. Reeni is in Florida and I'm in California. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, where were you born?
I was born on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, New York.
Huh. Mm-hmm. You have a little accent?
Do I?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm from Chicago. People say, oh, I knew that. I think I speak just fine. So
Yeah, I'm probably a New Yorkese to some degree.
uh-huh. How long did you stay in New York?
I left when I was 30.
Mm-hmm. So quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you go to Florida from New York or?
No, I'm not really, I mean, I'm in Florida, but
Right.
I'm only in Florida because my partner can't deal with New York winters.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought this little mobile home in Florida 7 years ago. So we come down here for 3-4 months in the wintertime. But normally I live in New Paltz, New York, which is 90 miles north of New York City. There's a college, SUNY New Paltz, City University of New York in New Paltz. So it's this little village that's kind of hip because of the university.
Are you currently in your mobile home?
Yes.
Now? Looks great.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Thank you. This is a second one we bought because we needed more space because Marge is one of 8 children and her family comes down here and we needed some more space. So we bought a bigger house last year.
So do you have siblings yourself? Do you have?
I have one sister who lives where you are. Well, where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles.
My sister lives in San Francisco.
Okay. And she was the one that sort of led you to this interview, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. She said, you should talk to my sister.
Yeah.
Now we're doing that. I'm supposed to ask you your occupation.
Well, I'm 73, so I don't really have one now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of retired. I still do work for friends. My first occupation was electrical engineer, computer science, high-tech person for 21 years. And then I quit that and I became a contractor, renovating.
A contractor?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. Marge hired me. That's how we met.
That was good. That was really good for you then.
Yeah, really.
How long ago was that?
24 years ago.
Oh, almost your silver anniversary. When's your anniversary?
Well, we met 24 years ago, but we say we're together for 23. When is my anniversary? October 8th, but then we got married in 2013 on August 16th.
Mm-hmm. Where were you married, in Florida or in New York?
In New York, in New Paltz. Not really in Esopus, but just, justice of the peace. She put on a black robe and said all these nice things and married us.
You were official then.
Yeah, and our 2 witnesses were my mother, who was 87 at the time, and a very good friend of all of ours who was 96 at the time.
Really?
And they both sat there in one of the little pews and cried.
Tears of joy, you hope, right?
Yes, of course.
Right. How nice. So you obviously had the support of your family about being a lesbian?
Yeah. A little bit of background. I was, like I said, I was born in New York City on the Lower East Side to parents who at that point were both members of the Communist Party. So I'm
Really?
considered
Huh.
to be a red diaper baby.
I never heard that expression.
Oh, yeah,
Huh.
red diaper, red communists, reds.
Right, no.
So red diaper. So I was brought up in a very left-wing, activist, justice-seeking household.
Huh. And did
So
you
when I
follow
came-
suit? Did you incorporate that into your own development?
Oh, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my sister and I both did. She's
Mhm.
active in San Francisco, in different things all these years, and I've been active
Uh-huh.
in different ways. So, yeah, when I came out, my mom was fine.
Mhm.
My father, who was 11 years older than my mom, and he had been born in Russia, and he was pretty uncomfortable talking about anything to do with sex.
Uh-huh.
And he
Especially with his
assumed,
daughter.
he
Right.
assumed that being a lesbian was only about sex.
Mhm.
And I thought his response was pretty funny. He said, it's okay, do what you want, but why do you have to march about it? And I thought, Dad, I've been marching since before I could walk.
You taught
I've
me to
been on
march.
picket lines and march on Washington forever. And you
Uh-huh.
don't want me to march for my rights? But in time, he came around, he was fine.
Uh-huh. And were you in a relationship with Marge at that time?
No,
No.
I came out in 71.
What made you think that you were a lesbian?
Like I said, I was active in different things back
Mhm.
then, and I was with guys, and it just didn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
It wasn't fun, didn't feel good. So I just stopped being with anybody. And then I got involved in the feminist movement more and more. And in that arena, I was just sort of caught up in the women's movement. And I came out, shortly
Yeah.
after that. And it was just a gleeful time. It was high, we were going to change the world, and we knew we were going to change the world.
That's true, we have.
Like tomorrow.
Right, we're still working at it, but it's
Yes,
changed.
absolutely.
And so that was your first relationship with another woman, was when you were involved in the women's marching and.
Yeah.
Mhm. And how old
Actually,
were you?
I had just turned 22.
Uh-huh.
I was born
I'm
in
interested
48.
in since we're writing this legacy project, so to speak, I'm interested in people being able to see when we first decided, okay, this is who I am and this is where I'm going, what age we were. If you think of this, we're doing today, it's just a conversation primarily about your career and your sexuality.
Uh-huh.
Is your father still living?
Oh, no, he died in 78.
So what was it like being the daughter of a communist?
It's just who we were.
Uh-huh.
They were very active. They were very busy.
Mhm.
My father was the New York State campaign manager for a political party called the American Labor Party.
Mhm. I heard of that.
And because of that, he got blacklisted. So from very young, my mom supported the family as a secretary.
For her.
Yeah,
Pretty
I mean,
amazing.
she didn't get blacklisted, so she could still work.
Mhm.
My father had been in the printing industry, and he'd get a job and then he'd get fired, and then he'd get another job and he'd get fired. You know, the FBI would come around and he'd get
Really?
fired.
Wow.
So he couldn't support the family.
Mhm,
So my mom did.
mhm.
And you know, there were hard times. We didn't have much money. They had to borrow from family, but we sort of all knew why we were in this position, and we were all together in it.
That's good.
You know, we got a quarter allowance. All my friends got $1,
Mhm.
but I knew why I got a quarter.
I got a
So,
quarter too.
yeah,
Right. You had to
Yeah.
move up to the dollar.
eventually, yeah.
Right.
Um,
So explain something to me. So he was blacklisted, and blacklisting meant that he couldn't not be employed in this country? I don't understand.
well, it meant that every time he did get a job, the
Mhm.
FBI would come around and say, that guy's a commie,
I see.
fire him, or we're gonna come down on your company.
Really?
So he'd get fired,
Mhm.
and then he'd get another job, and a week later he'd get fired. And they wouldn't let him work.
Uh-huh.
And that happened to lots of my parents' friends, and a couple of them took their own lives. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't support their family.
Right.
They felt like their family was better without them, and they took their own lives. It was McCarthyism. It was a very bad time in this country, and one that I fear could happen again.
I've heard that. Not
Yeah,
from you.
just, you know, the scapegoating and hounding, and you're not on the right side, and you know, and we were Jewish, and the combination of communist and Jewish was kind of a death knell. It was a bad time, but they kept on pushing. You know, they kept on trucking. They
Good for
they
them.
didn't give up their beliefs or their activism.
Yeah. So when you reflect on your own life, what would you say was your greatest adventure?
Well, actually, on March 8th, which is International Women's Day,
Right.
I'm going to be part of a panel of 5 women, 1 moderator, and 4 participants who were involved, 2 from New York, 2 from Cambridge, Massachusetts, who were involved in building takeovers back in 1970, 1971.
So how were you involved?
Along with another woman, the 2 of us initiated this action, and we got other women involved, other friends, other just women who were interested. Our thrust was combining in New York City a housing action and feminism. So we got together 200 women, marched across town, took over a vacant government-owned building, and set up a women's center.
Really?
And we survived for 12 days.
That's good.
And then they threw us out. They arrested us. They beat a bunch of us. There was a police riot. It was really quite a scene. Do you know the group OLOC?
No.
It stands for Old Lesbians Organizing for
Right.
Change.
I know that.
Yeah. So
never heard
they're hosting
Mhm.
this panel.
So what was the objective in taking over empty buildings?
Well, it was owned by the city.
The buildings were? Mhm.
Yeah, our building was. In Massachusetts, it was owned by Harvard. But our building was owned by the city, and we were pointing out that they're not serving our needs. They're not serving the needs of women.
Mhm.
So we will. So we set up a food co-op and a clothing exchange and a feminist school and a daycare center.
Wow,
Like that.
wonderful.
For
But
12 days.
but it wasn't lasting. It didn't last.
No, they threw us out. They evicted us. They beat us up. They arrested us all.
Mhm.
And within a month, they had knocked the building down.
Really? Wow.
It's a parking lot now.
Uh-huh.
The building was right across the street from the 9th precinct, which I thought was really funny.
So they could
A police
watch you.
precinct. We took over a building across the street from a police precinct, figuring that if, we didn't let men in,
Mhm.
it was a women's building. If
Right.
men got mad and started being shitty, the cops were right there.
That was helpful. But what made you think that you would be allowed to maintain that building, to stay in it?
Well, we were negotiating with the city.
I see.
The building was in terrible shape. It had been lived in by addicts and alcoholics for several years.
Mhm.
And they stole all the copper pipes and broke all the windows, and it was really a mess, but it was a huge, beautiful, double wide tenement building.
Mhm.
And we were negotiating with them to let us keep this building and let us continue our programs. And then they decided that we would have to be a welfare center for women. And in that, we would have to kind of spy on the women and make sure they didn't have visitors and that they only had X number of socks, prove that they were poor. And we said, we're not going to be
Not
their
gonna police them,
jailers.
right?
And then a great adventure. Well, one of them was just a vacation, but it was just terrific. Marge and I and an ex actually from long ago went to Banff, which is the Canadian Rockies.
Huh?
And we just hiked every day, like 16 miles and,
That's
up
an adventure.
mountains and over glaciers and, get to the top of the mountain and there's this little cafe where they serve hot chocolate. It was just wonderful. It was a great vacation.
So you're a born leader.
No, but
Well, really,
I do some stuff.
I can tell, but you
Yeah.
have leadership in your, I can
In my
hear it, I
genes,
can
maybe.
feel it, right?
Yeah. My parents were especially my mom was quite the leader.
So you learned. So what are you doing now in your life that you're finding adventuresome at this point?
Well, this March 8th Zoom thing
Huh?
about the women's building takeovers is coming up.
So can you send me that information? So I
Sure,
can see it? Yeah, I'd like that.
sure.
Mhm.
It's through OLOC, so you have to register to be part of it.
Okay.
And then a small group of us are also planning a honoring Women's History Month Zoom, where we're just inviting women to come on the
And talk.
Zoom and talk about whatever, a woman who inspired her,
Mhm.
a piece of women's history that you remember.
So what are you going to talk about?
Sing a song.
I like that. So who inspired you? What woman inspired?
I think
Besides your mother.
what I decided to do was read a list of women inventors
Mhm.
and what they had invented, which was really lost to history because it was never mentioned.
Right.
And in fact, I have 2 patents
There you
from when I worked high tech.
Uh-huh.
And when I read them now, it's like, what the hell is that? It was very detailed and esoteric, but
That was you at that time.
it's 2 patents, and that's
Mhm.
fun.
So you're a busy woman.
Yeah. It's
Do you have questions you'd like to ask us about what we're doing, the collection? Have you had an opportunity to look at some of the videos?
a couple of them I have, yeah. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful that you're doing that. And
But talk about interesting women,
making a record. Yeah.
right? It's a place, it's a resource. I like the archive idea. It's something I don't know anything about, so I'm learning as I go.
Uh-huh.
We have some good support. So
And how did you start it?
we retired, Marge and myself, and we've always been part of Los Angeles in and out. So we decided we would come here full time to retire. And then COVID happened, almost a year, within the year we retired. And I was bored because I felt cooped up, and
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, I need to do something. So what do I like? I like people's stories. And I said, okay, we don't know anything about making videos. We have help, we're learning. And Marge is editing with Kelly, and we have a really small group of people. And we've interviewed about 60 women now. We've been at it for a year February. And it's interesting, it's exciting. Where it's going to go, I don't know. I like it's a legacy that we go on forever. One of the first women we interviewed talked about conversion therapy, which she had participated in. And one of the things she said at the end of her interview was that she wanted her grandchildren to know she had been married to a man, that she had done everything possible to really look and see that she was a lesbian or not. And that really clicked into the legacy thing. And I thought, what a wonderful thing to leave. She actually then did a private, it's on the webpage. She talked about conversion therapy separately. Her name is Karen Granado, so you can view her discussion. And I had contact with a young woman many years ago who was 4 or 5. And when we came back to Los Angeles, her mother called me, and we hadn't been in contact. And she said that her daughter was a lesbian. And so I thought, oh, great, and that she had tried to kill herself. She was coming out, and she had received help from the center here, and also she'd been hospitalized at UCLA. She'd been abused by the father when she was growing up. And I thought, if so many of the women here have been suicidal that we've interviewed, and they've come through it. And if she could have read some of the stories that we're recording, it might have given her hope. And I'm glad she's now in college, and she's doing the life of the woman her age. She has a girlfriend, and so it worked out. But think of all the women that didn't have a place to go. That we don't even know because they're gone. And so I thought, well, this goes to a university. The Cal State Dominguez Hills is a huge archive, and we're posted in there. And also the June Mazer Lesbian Archives, which has been around forever, that goes to UCLA. So the outreach is good, and we're just sort of falling into it. So, any other questions for me?
Where did you live before you went to LA? You said you were going back.
I was born in Chicago. I came to Los Angeles on Route 66. And when I was in my 20s, I'm a registered nurse. I worked at LA County Hospital. I met Marge there. She's an orthopedic surgeon. I was the head nurse in the operating room. And sort of
My Marge is a registered nurse also.
Really great. She's a wonderful person. That's why she told you she couldn't be in New York all the time.
Yeah.
As a registered nurse, you have to have a big voice. I'm sure you've noticed that. And
big heart.
Big heart, right. So in closing then, if you knew that you were going to die in the near future, what would you like to be remembered for?
For having stood up for justice.
That's great.
And doing it in such a way that recognized that you can't just talk.
Mhm.
You gotta be active. You gotta ruffle feathers. This has been a pleasure, and I will check
you.
out others of the interviews.
Okay,
Thanks
And,
for doing this.
thank you. So have a good day. Thank you
You
very
too.
much.
Thanks.